Alright guys, so a couple of days ago, during the opening ceremony of the Olympics that are happening in France right now, there was a complete conservative reactionary freakout over some of the religious iconography that was occurring. Now, I wasn't going to make a video on that at the time because honestly, I don't care that much about the Olympics. I certainly don't care about the so-called misappropriation of religious iconography, but I do have a follow-up here for you guys because I think this is a story that honestly gives a perfect insight in terms of how far gone many reactionary conservatives are at this point, how they have completely lost the plot. So here's the latest from the Hollywood Reporter here. Elon Musk, Logan Paul, J.K. Rowling, and more have weighed in about the quote-unquote fairness of letting Iman Khalif compete at the Paris Olympics, with many seeming to believe that she is a man. And Khalif, as they point out here, was raised and identifies as a female and is not transgender. So first off, Elon Musk, Logan Paul, J.K. Rowling, nightmare blunt rotation. Okay? Absolutely horrifying group of people to coalesce into one sentence. And so essentially what this story is revolving around is that you have this Algerian boxer named Iman Khalif. And she got into a boxing match at the Olympics with this Italian boxer that you see here on screen. And the Italian boxer, it seems like, basically gave up within a minute or so of this match taking place. She then went on to say that she had felt worse pain than she had ever felt before in a boxing match. I think she had some injury to her nose or something like that. She basically gave up the fight, okay? And so immediately you had some of these high-profile anti-trans accounts on Twitter joining in this chorus, saying this is so unfair. How could anybody allow this to happen? This is what's wrong with society. This is the downfall of Western civilization. How could we allow for a quote-unquote man to compete against a woman in Olympic-level boxing? Now, as you can probably see from this headline already, we're running into a little bit of an issue here because this Algerian boxer is not even trans. She's not trans. Now, the reason I'm covering this story is because this has become such a major high-profile thing that even the current vice presidential candidate of Donald J. Trump is tweeting about this. He says, J.D. Vance, this is where Kamala Harris's ideas about gender lead to a grown man pummeling a woman in a boxing match. This is disgusting, and all of our leaders should condemn it. And he's replying here to Charlie Kirk from Turning Points USA, who said enough of the gender insanity, okay, and the pandering to avoid hurting someone's precious feelings. The Olympics just allowed a biological man to pummel Italian Olympian Angela Carini. Now, again, this is not based in the factual reality of what is going on here. This Algerian boxer is not trans. She has been a woman from the moment that she was born. She was raised as a woman. She has always been a woman, right? And that's not me saying, you know, from a leftist perspective that like trans women are women. I'm saying this is not even a trans woman. This is just a cisgendered woman who is competing in this boxing match. And you have a vice presidential candidate tweeting about this. This got 8.3 million views, but this doesn't even patch up to where J.K. Rowling was at on this. She says, could any picture sum up our new men's rights movement better? The smirk of a male who knows that he's protected by a misogynist sporting establishment enjoying the distress of a woman he's just punched in the head and whose life's ambition he just shattered. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. So to get into the actual reality of what is going on here, let's go ahead and listen here to one of these Olympic organizers who's responding to a lot of this commentary coming from conservatives right now, just to sort of clear up exactly what the situation is.
Boxer was born female, was registered female, lived her life as a female, boxed as a female, has a female passport. This is not a transgender case. I know you're not saying that, but there has been some confusion that somehow it's a man fighting a woman. This is just not the case. Scientifically, on that there is consensus. Scientifically, This is not a man fighting a woman, and I think we need to kind of get that. This woman has competed for a very, very long time in women's sport against many opponents, in fact, against Italian boxers twice in the last couple of years, I think. So I think if you start working on all suspicions, then we end up very much heading towards a gender testing regime, which is...
Okay, so we have very clear, clarification on what's going on here. Essentially, it looks like, so to give you guys the full scope of some of the allegations that are being made, there are some people who are claiming that she has XY chromosomes. I can't confirm that. I don't know if that's actually the case. We'll get into more details about exactly what the backstory is on that. There are other people who are claiming that she has higher testosterone levels than what a baseline would be expected for a cisgendered woman, right? So those are sort of the two main things that are circulating right now, as well as potentially some people are just saying she has masculine features, right? Which I think is honestly the core of this, ironically, coming from people like J.K. Rowling, who proclaim themselves to be, sort of feminists of some sort, is that you're looking at a cisgendered woman who has been a woman her entire life. She's not trans. She didn't just transition into being a woman or anything like that. And you're basically looking at her performance in the Olympics and you're saying, there is no way that a woman could compete at this level. There's no way that a woman could do what this person just did. That to me is extremely sexist, on top of, obviously being transphobic, even though this is not a situation where there is a trans person involved, as was just clarified by this Olympic expert here. Now, to get into some more of the backstory on this entire story and how we got to this point in the first place, this was posted on Reddit, which I think kind of clarifies, and I've tried to do my best at fact-checking the backstory of all of this and making sure that this lines up with all of the latest information that we have, and it seems like it's pretty accurate here. So this poster on Reddit says, the short version is that she is a cis woman who has been competing for years against other women, and there was never any issue, including at the 2020 Olympics. Never any question of her gender or testosterone levels. No articles, no headlines, no commentary from her opponents, nothing. She doesn't even have a particularly stellar record, though she's been improving in recent years. And as was just pointed out by this Olympic, expert there, she's actually lost previously to other Italian female boxing opponents. So it's not as if she's like some invincible, Herculean man who's just like identifying as a woman because he wants to get an Olympic medal. Like, this is somebody who has been competing in boxing for years as a woman the entire time. There's never been any discrepancy there. And she has lost numerous times to other women. So the idea that this is just like, some sort of a grand plot of trans people trying to insert themselves into sporting and that they are identifying as trans just to sneak by a medal or something like that is insanity. It's complete insanity. But they continue. They say she was even tested at the 2022 World Champions and they didn't find any problems. She took the silver medal without incident up until the 2023 World Championships when she beat a Russian boxer. So here's where we get to some of the the backstory on some of these allegations. They say, quick backstory on the IBA, the boxing organization that tested her and oversees the Boxing World Championship. It's been in contention with the IOC for years for issues of corruption and concerns over refereeing and judging, but things have gotten worse over the past couple of years. The IOC was concerned about the IBA's complete financial dependence on their sponsor, which is the Russian-owned Gazprom, and the IBA also elected a corrupt Russian president in 2020, and in 2022, they wrongly declared his re-election opponent ineligible so that he won in an uncontested re-election. Multiple countries, including the US and the UK, boycotted the 2023 World Championship because the IBA suspended Ukraine and unsuspended Russia and Belarus in 2022 against the IOC guidelines. All of this ultimately resulted in the IOC severing ties with the IBA, which has fucked up so bad that the IOC may drop boxing altogether, and another organization has risen up in their place. Now, one more thing. They say, anyway, Emain Khalif competes in the World Championships in 2022. She undergoes testing. There are no eligibility issues, right? He continues. He says she gets to the round of 16, then beats a Russian boxer And suddenly she gets tested again, and based on the results of that test and her test from 2022, they declare her ineligible. The IBA never said what kind of test it was, just that it wasn't a testosterone test, nor did they explain the results, citing privacy. And in an interview with Russian state-owned media, the Russian president of the IBA said that they did a DNA test and found that Khalif had XY chromosomes, but again, look at the source, the audience, the track record of corruption, the timing, plus they did this test in 2022 and didn't have any issues with the results. They used the 2022 test as part of their basis for disqualifying her, even though they allowed her to compete in 2023 up until she beat a Russian athlete. So there's no evidence that she has higher testosterone. She competed in the 2020 Olympics without incident, even when other female athletes with high testosterone were withdrawn. And the IBA didn't administer a testosterone test. So, in other words, guys, I mean, what this gets down to is you have basically what is being called transvestigation, okay? This is what's going on here. You have conservatives, reactionaries, who are so caught up in their anti-trans bigotry that they are looking at cis women who have been women their entire lives, right? This is not somebody who became trans later in life or came to that realization later in life. This is somebody who was born as a woman. They were identified on their birth certificate as a woman, right? There are allegations that she has slightly higher testosterone levels, or she has some sort of a, a sex anomaly in regards to that kind of stuff. But this is somebody who was born as a woman, raised as a woman, lived her entire life as a woman, worked her way up in the boxing world to get to the point where she is a fucking Olympic athlete at the highest echelons, the highest upper levels of where you can be as an athlete. And now, because what exactly? Because some people are alleging she has slightly higher testosterone levels, or because she has some masculine features, that she should be ineligible, that it is a crime against humanity that she would compete in the Olympics. I mean, they have completely lost the fucking plot. They have completely lost the plot. And the other point that I want to get to here is this example that I tweeted out earlier today. I said, weird how the fairness of genetics literally only comes up when people want to attack trans people. And so my point here is basically this. Now, keep in mind, again, we're not talking about a trans person competing in women's Olympic sporting, right? Because this is not a trans person that we're referring to in the boxing competition. But I think that this is an important point to make, which is that if we're going to start making arguments about how certain people have genetic advantages in sports, then are we going to start applying this to everything? Because this is a picture here, guys, from these Olympics in Paris in 2024. So this guy here plays for the Japanese national basketball team, right? He's about 5'8", okay? Extremely short. This guy over here, this is Victor Wembanyama, who is French. He's playing for the French national team. Now, this guy is an up-and-coming prodigy in the NBA. I happen to be a big NBA fan, so I'm tracking his first season in his career and everything like that. This guy is a complete genetic anomaly, okay? This guy is, I don't know how tall specifically he is, anywhere I'd say between like 7'4", 7'5", maybe, right? So he is a genetic anomaly. He is extremely tall, has an insane wingspan. He's extremely talented. He's working on his body. He's putting a bunch of work into it. But the point is, if you are going to apply the standards that certain genetic advantages mean that somebody should not be able to compete in any given sport, then you have to apply that across the board. You would have to look at somebody like Victor Wembanyama and say, this man is too tall to compete in the NBA, right? I'm an avid basketball player. Okay, I played basketball my entire life. I'm about 6'1", 6'2". I think I'm pretty decent at basketball, sort of like an LA Fitness pickup game. I'll be doing pretty good in that kind of a situation, kind of basketball player. Now, I could look at the modern NBA. I could look at somebody like Victor Wembanyama. I could look at somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo. I could look at somebody like LeBron James and say, it is unfair that those guys are allowed to compete in the NBA because genetically, as like a 6'1", 6'2" white guy, I can't compete against them, right? So it's unfair that they are allowed to play basketball in the same league as me, because that puts me at a genetic disadvantage because I'm not as tall as them, right? I'm not 6'6", 250 pounds like LeBron is, or I'm not 7'4", you know, however many pounds Victor Wembanyama is, I could say that that's unfair. Or I could just be a fucking reasonable person and understand that that's how sports work. That's how all sports for the entire history of humanity have worked. People are built differently. That's how this shit goes, right? I could be 6'10", I could be 250 pounds, I could have a 45-inch vertical, and then suddenly I could have a chance at making it into the NBA. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. Same thing goes with other sports as well. Look at somebody like Michael Phelps. This is a guy who won how many Olympic medals? 8 Olympic medals, something insane like that. This is a guy who has a longer wingspan than your average person. This is a guy who apparently has like double jointed ankles, which allow him to have more flexibility when he's swimming in the water, right? This is a guy who apparently produces half the amount of lactic acid as other swimmers comparable to him produce, which allows him to have more endurance as he is swimming, more stamina as he is swimming. We could look at somebody like Michael Phelps and say, well, this guy is a genetic anomaly. He has a genetic advantage over all of these other swimmers, so take away all of his medals, right? But suddenly we don't do that. And so that's my concluding point here, which is that if any of these motherfuckers who are freaking out about this Algerian boxer, right, if they actually were concerned about genetic advantages in sports, then they would be talking about instances like this that you see on your screen. They would be talking about stripping the Olympic medals from somebody like Michael Phelps, but they're not. They're not. One other thing that I forgot to mention as I was covering in this video is that apparently in Algeria, because of their sort of like more regressive social policy, it's actually illegal, like straight up illegal, to be gay or to be trans. So the idea that like the Algerian boxing team is going to send a trans person to represent them is in and of itself insane and wouldn't have ever happened. So there's a lot more that I could say about this. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at that. This entire situation is a perfect example of how conservatives have completely lost the plot. They have completely lost the plot. We are talking about tweets from people like Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling and Logan Paul that have hundreds of millions of views on these tweets. Hundreds of millions. People buying into this idea that this Algerian boxer was a man and then just woke up one day and they were like, you know what, I kind of want to win a gold medal. So I'm just going to pretend to be a woman and go into the Olympic female boxing competition and steal the medal away from this Italian cop or whatever who was in the competition as well. It is utterly ridiculous. It's obviously transphobic. I mean, it's a completely insane situation that we are looking at right now. So I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. I know that this is a contentious issue. I know that this is controversial, but this shit is just completely ridiculous and insane to me.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying